Welcome to Universal Bullion Radio. This is your host, Leigh Greenberg. In these difficult economic times, it is hard to understand what is really happening. Especially in this election season, many terms are mentioned, like tax cuts, cost of living, inflation, discretionary spending, stimulus. Currently, one of the more used terms is quantitative easing. Here to discuss what is going on is Selwyn Gerber. He is an economist, CPA, and investment advisor. He is the managing director of Gerber & Company Incorporated in Beverly Hills, California, a full-service CPA firm which is an independent BDO Alliance member and focuses primarily on providing accounting, tax, and wealth advisory services. He is also a founding member of RVW Investing, LLC, wealth advisors using a low-cost index-based asset allocation model combined with secure bonds. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Lee. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Is it possible that even economists like you get somewhat confused these days?
Yeah, I think it's hard to keep a straight head when all the chaos is going on. So yes, confusion I think would be a very good adjective to describe what's going on, or abstract noun to describe what's going on. I think we're confused and confounded and blundering around as the great debate takes place between Keynesianism, which is the classic economics, and the Austrian Kayak, Hayes, the various models of the Austrian economists, which are far more brutal. And as that battle rages, and every generation it reincarnates, but it's essentially the battle between those who believe that printing more money will solve the problem versus those who think that printing more money doesn't solve anything. It simply creates delayed inflation.
Well, it feels like the Keynesians are winning right now with the big build-up to quantitative easing 3, or QE3, which has just been launched.
That is true. Yeah, we're in the midst of yet another series of quantitative easing. QE is a very fancy word for saying that you basically self-generate funds. I mean, we basically print the money, issue bonds, and then buy back the bonds, and in that process we're supposed to solve some economic problems. How that actually works is going to be quite interesting to see. It's arguable whether it's worked up to now at all, given the extremely sluggish growth of the economy. We have what is certainly the slowest rebound in American economic history after a collapse, and so it seems as though we're trying to deal with things from the wrong angle. I'm an old-fashioned kind of guy, and I look at business formation rather than cash creation as the primary generator of jobs and prosperity. And if we look at the rate of business formation over the past 4 or 5 years, it has literally fallen off a cliff. And without business formation, we don't really have job creation. And without job creation, there can be no prosperity. So that's pretty much how I see things.
It seems the Federal Reserve Bank has put a lot of faith in quantitative easing and lowering the interest rates. Can you explain what the Fed is trying to accomplish?
We don't really know. I mean, in theory, if you lower interest rates enough, there's a big incentive to borrow. And when businesses borrow and they put the money to productive use, that tends to be a good and auspicious predictor of economic growth. The problem now is it's not interest rates that are affecting borrowing, it's borrowability. In other words, you've got really two classes of borrowers. You've got the Warren Buffetts of the world, who basically borrow at treasury bill rates. And for them, whether interest rates are 0, 1, 2, or 3%, really doesn't make much difference. They're getting the full benefit of these very low interest rates. But for most people who are in the entrepreneurial category, the money is unavailable to them regardless of interest rates. So that if you or I wanted to go to a bank and borrow money for a pizza store that we'd like to invest in, for all practical purposes, there's virtually no money available. In other words, we're dealing with a best of times and worst of times scenario, as Charles Dickens once said. For those who have money and have credit, borrowing is accessible. But for those who are the startups, the entrepreneurs, there's really no money available for them. And so the businesses that were started up 8, 10 years ago with unused lines of credits on a residence, or unused credit card facilities of yourself and your friends, there's none of that anymore. There's no unused credit card balances, and there's no undrawn down second home mortgages on lines of credit, HELOCs they call them. And so the real entrepreneurs are decapitated at this point, and we're not seeing very much at all in the way of business formation, which is a tragedy for this country.
Wasn't the purpose of giving so much cash to the banks and the financial institution systems supposed to trickle down to the people you're talking about?
Well, trickle down I generally see in a different mode, but it was certainly given to the banks in an effort to encourage them to lend. I think that was a massive, catastrophic error. I really think we have a wonderful system of lending to small businesses, which is called, appropriately, the Small Business Association, SBA loans. But unfortunately, instead of giving the money through the SBA system, which is already geared to handle lending through appropriate ways with appropriate checks and balances to small businesses, it was simply given to the banks to really do with what they please. And what they simply did is they took the money, which was virtually free, and bought secured treasury bills and made a nice spread on taxpayers' money, while the entrepreneurs of the country stumbled and struggled and had no access to funds.
You mentioned Keynesian versus Austrian economics earlier. Is it possible to have a free market with so much government regulation?
Well, it's always a tension. In a free market capitalist system like the United States, a great free market system, we have a tension between those who are in favor of free market, and then, of course, the government, by necessity, has to play its role in terms of providing the safety net, the regulatory environment for the free market to function in a way that works in the benefits of the entire society. If either of those goes to too far an extreme, you have severe difficulties. When the government's too involved, you really have Europe. And when the government's not involved enough, you have the kind of situation we had over here over the last 5 years or so, where banks were manufacturing meaningless pieces of paper, wrapping them up under a seal of approval with a AAA credit rating, and at the end of the sausage machine, you had taken basically dog meat and dressed it up as fine veal and packaged it that way. And what we've got to do is have a crystal clear sausage machine, so when it comes out the other side, people know what they're buying. And that also means the people who are giving the seal of approvals, the good housekeeping seal of approvals as a AAA rated instrument, need to be held accountable for that rating. It's the only place in the country where those people who are the rating service have absolutely no obligation to those who are relying on them for the rating.
Amazing. Lately, there has been a lot of talk about Ayn Rand. She emphasized individual rights and laissez-faire capitalism. Is she relevant at all today?
Well, I think she symbolizes the kind of extreme where government's not involved at all. As I said, there's this tension between the two extremes. And the extreme that really deals with laissez-faire, free market capitalism, unbridled by regulatory oversight and also unbridled by any kind of societal obligations, that becomes a problem also. So certainly Ayn Rand has made a huge contribution, and she's kept us away from Europe, the European model, which now we all know, and the Soviet model, and so on. All of those, the entire European economy is pretty much imploding. So she's kept us away from that. But there are elements of Europe that we need to maintain. We need to have a country that has safety nets for those who are incapable of working, who are disabled, who have health issues and so on. But at the same time, we should never make it so attractive to be unemployed that becomes the legacy which people hand down to their children.
Where do you have faith in the economy?
Where do I have faith? I have faith in the large global corporations right now. I think they're making lots of money, and they're doing it, of course, in a way that will not please many of your listeners. They are outsourcing, and they are creating technologically efficient models. All of us know how few people we need to interact with today versus even as short as 10 or 15 years ago in almost anything we do. Banking, you don't need to see anybody anymore. Even checking out of a parking lot in a shopping center doesn't have any people involved anymore, much less so in manufacturing and administrative functions. You call an office today, you'll get a voicemail system. So technology has dramatically cut the number of jobs, and outsourcing means that those jobs that are remaining will be sent overseas whenever possible. So not for the best of reasons, but nevertheless for economic and gain reasons, we're very focused on investing in the large global corporations, and in particular those that pay big and steady dividends.
Do you think that commodities with intrinsic value could be the next cycle?
Well, I don't see gold. We don't see gold and silver as exactly the same. So gold is not there as an income-producing retirement asset. We view gold rather as a measure of panic or anxiety in the financial order, because by history we know that when all else fails, people run to gold. And so in our model portfolio, we currently have about 5% in GLD, which is a gold ETF. And the reason for that is not because it's an investment. It's really an insurance policy against financial catastrophe. And that's the role we see gold as. We're not gold buffs who advise people that they should sell everything and hoard gold. We think people need to build balanced, secure, intelligently designed portfolios, and then have a modicum of gold in case they're wrong or for periods, and they tend to be sporadic periods where people lose faith and confidence in the system, and where gold resumes its historic role.
In this crazy economic time we're in, you sure sound very positive about the future.
Yes.
How could someone get in contact with you?
Well, we're online. You can go to, if you want to look at our wealth management company, it's rvwinvesting.com, rvwinvesting.com. And if any of your listeners sends an email to the address on that website, we'll be happy to send them a copy of the book that was just published called The Wealth Blueprint. Our CPA firm is Gerber Co., GERBERCO.com. And on that website, there's a treasure chest of tax and financial planning tips and strategies that could save your listeners quite a lot of taxes and help them to be proactive in the area of taxes, because our motto in the tax area is surprises are for birthdays, not for tax time.
Thank you for taking the time to explain what is happening.
Thank you, Lee. It's a pleasure to be with you.
This is Leigh Greenberg with UniversalBullion.com reminding you that it is all about the physical ounces of gold and silver. How many ounces do you own? Thank you for your time.